Hi, I'm Olivia Round from Urban, and today I'm joined by Curran, who's one of the partners at Clarke Hopkins Clarke. So today Jordan's going to discuss how COVID-19 could influence the design of mixed-use communities. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks for having me.
So last year we discussed the future of mixed-use precinct design in Australia. So now, given the current pandemic, what learnings has Clarke Hopkins Clarke taken from the situation, and that will shape the way you design communities in future?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite an interesting time in how COVID will start to affect our suburbs, and rolling on from that, mixed-use precincts as well. Big key theme we've probably seen is this idea about living local. So obviously the shift in workers, especially over the last 3 months away from the city, it's meant that our suburban areas, have almost been flooded with lots of workers actually living and working in the same place. And it's been really interesting how people are starting to utilise the space around them. So we've been really interested in how that will start to affect a lot of these suburban villages. And for us, it's interesting the kind of anecdotal evidence that we've seen, or even talking to people at the local coffee shop. Once things have actually started to open up, it hasn't necessarily been a positive for the local shops, because for the first time ever, they've actually got this day trade that they never have really had before. Lots of these suburban villages have always traded well on if it's a morning rush, restaurants doing well after sort of work hours or on weekends. But our challenge with these suburban villages has always been trying to activate them during the day. And it's been really interesting to actually start to see that shift, because people are set up now working from home. So all of a sudden, you've got hundreds of thousands of more people kind of spilling into these suburbs and starting to activate these spaces. So I think it's definitely going to be an interesting space. These smaller suburban walkable villages, which has always been a real focus for us at Clarke Hopkins Clarke as well. We've created a lot in the past, and we've got a lot of learnings of ones that have been successful, and others that have been, I suppose, not as successful. And it always comes back to trying to get that activation during the day with commercial workers. And now, for the first time ever, it's almost like this the pandemic shift that we're going towards, where we've actually got that daytime trade that's starting to activate these areas day and night.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that many people were probably craving during the lockdown period is access to fresh air, sunlight, and nature. So how can architects and developers provide residents with a better quality of life through the design of their home and the surrounding neighbourhood and the facilities like you mentioned?
Well, I think obviously a lot of it coming back to lifestyle and this idea of healthy, active place to live, looking at new communities with connections to parks and walkways, bike paths. I think the big shift is people have actually gotten the time that they've been commuting back, and there's been this shift towards, in Sydney, I think each day people spend over an hour on average commuting. So a lot of people are actually putting that time into utilising recreation space around their house. So it's actually been a really interesting sort of shift to start to see. So people using parks more, utilising bike paths, actually going out and getting fresh air. And I also think from a mental health point of view, that idea about isolation, especially a lot of it's been really emphasised. If you're stuck at your home during the last 3 months, to be able to get out, to get to a local park, and just not even necessarily talking or interacting with people, but just seeing life, I think is a really critical part of almost being a human, and a really important part of these communities and neighbourhoods that we need to understand as well. And I think for developers to understand that people have experienced that shift, and wanting to get that lifestyle component where they used to just spend it either stuck in a car or travelling to work, they're actually putting that in, using that in to use these recreation spaces to create really meaningful places for people. I think developers really need to start to focus on that within the new communities that they're starting to create.
That's so true. And I know there was a study by a Danish architect, Professor Jan Gehl, who found that COVID-19 encouraged people in 4 European cities to visit public spaces where there was more facilities available rather than travelling to the CBD. So do you think Australia is well set up for a similar kind of demand for public infrastructure, or is there room for improvement?
Definitely room for improvement. I think a lot of the stats that we've seen, quite similar to Jan Gehl, so his analysis of people utilising public space and starting to understand that obviously during COVID, not as many people were using space within the CBD, but people were starting to sort of spread out and explore their local suburbs and parks a lot more. And in Sydney, there's been some really interesting stats coming out about park usage almost doubling. Even though gyms have been closed, people have actually been doing a lot more in terms of physical activity and recreation as well. So it's been quite an interesting shift. Even in terms of bike sales, I've seen some stats where bike sales are up like 300%. So it's this shift in mind, this shift in mindset where people are really starting to appreciate those public spaces. And I think that now that people have seen that, people are going to be expecting that as well. And I think a lot of new communities are starting to tailor a bit towards that, looking at, well-integrated parks, interconnectivity between someone's house to local park, to a local coffee shop or to the local school, and, starting to understand that journey around the suburb. But I definitely think that there's improvements to go, because that's going to be the expectation from consumers. So as architects, we need to really understand that shift and what sort of spaces people find important, and for developers to provide that as well.
So what public space typologies do you think have the most positive impact on a person's life?
I think being able to understand that lots of different people use public space, especially parks. They're very important for all age groups. So young kids, obviously very important. This idea of nature play and playgrounds, kicking a ball with parents, but also for older generations as well. They're actually really important for a place to come together, sit under a tree, have a chat, and sort of watch life happen around you. So for us, I think the really meaningful spaces are almost thinking that you're catering to such a broad market, because everyone finds these places valuable. And for us, this interconnectivity between different types of public spaces, where if you've got a little park, maybe almost a village square surrounded by cafes, and then a connection back to if it's a soccer field or a football field for different types of activity, and then maybe another walkway connecting back to a skate park. So it doesn't need to be huge facilities, but I think that interconnectedness between smaller facilities is something that we're really focusing on, because the advantage of that is it's encouraging people to continually move around their suburbs as well.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Do you have some projects that you're working on at the moment that you would like to mention that do feature that kind of interconnectivity?
One of the really interesting projects that we're working on at the moment is it's called Clara. So it's 8 new cities along a high-speed rail line between Sydney to Melbourne. And the big advantage for that is we can actually look at 8 new cities the size of Melbourne, but with a much smaller land mass, and think, if you were recreating a city of 300,000 people with technology in mind, sustainability in mind, walkability, health and well-being, what would those cities actually start to look like? And interdependence on different intergenerational living and things like that. So for us, it's trying to understand what those new types of living actually are. And Clara is a project that really gives us a chance to look at what a whole new city would look like almost post a pandemic, and design for the future.
And what's your process for ensuring that a new mixed-use precinct is well integrated within an existing community?
We've actually, during COVID, we've created an app called Place Rate. So for us, it was all about almost trying to take the creation of a new community away from just an architect saying, oh, that's a good idea, or an urban designer saying it's a good idea, and trying to put a bit more metrics behind decision making for these new areas. The last couple of years, as a practice, and Dean Landy, one of our other partners at Clarke Hopkins Clarke, we've spent a lot of time researching a book called Creating Vibrant Communities and looking at the common threads of successful mixed-use precincts around the world. And our app is trying to take all of that information and put it in a really user-friendly, easy-to-use program for everyone to use, where you can actually assess your projects, and it'll tell you, according to the global benchmarks, where you're doing well, and areas that you can actually start to improve. So the idea is it creates a bit of a refinement process, and starts to put some metrics around creating new communities. And if we provide this app, we want to give it out there to everyone, so everyone can use. So the idea is that everyone can assess their projects, not just according to projects that we've done, but actual global benchmark mixed-use projects and the common threads in between. So yeah, research is a big focus for us to make sure that the new places we create, we know that it's not just us saying it's a great idea. We've actually got some research and a methodology behind it to make sure that in the long run, it's going to be successful.
Fantastic. So what types of new community facilities are you looking to integrate within your master plans in future?
Big focus for us, even just thinking with some of the ones that we're looking at the moment, is trying to look how we can activate the front and the back of new developments. So where you've got maybe medium density townhouses, you've got a front door, but you might have a back laneway that has no eyes on it. There's no activation there. And some of the research we've done shows that laneways are actually about 15 to 20% of most developments. So usually you've just got a hard paved bitumen area. But for us, if we're trying to encourage people to walk around and move and feel safe in their suburbs, we're trying to see how we can start to activate some of these laneways with little home office studios, looking at better garages where you can actually open it up and start to share ideas with people out in the street. If you're working on something, creating timber work or metal work, actually working it on the street. So as people are walking down the laneway, they start to see this activation occurring there. And for us, we just want people we want to facilitate and encourage people to walk around the new communities that we create, bump into their neighbours, see what their neighbours are doing, and just really start to plant the seed of creating a new community.
Totally. So I guess it's really moving away from that whole idea of you get in your car, you drive to it, you come back again, and in that time you don't say a word to any of your neighbours. So I think that's really fantastic, creating a close-knit community.
Yeah, and even during COVID, there was quite an interesting thing where I think for a couple of weeks it was almost impossible to get chalk, because all the kids were drawing hopscotch and on their footpaths and on the roads and doing little artworks around the place. And it was great to see. You just start to realise that there's the potential to add all this extra life into our neighbourhoods. Yeah, it was almost a catalyst like COVID, and kids start to show grown-ups, where all this activity can occur. You don't need to hop into your car and find something interesting, in a surrounding suburb. You've actually got the interest is there. You've just got to, help facilitate for people to start to utilise their suburbs better.
Absolutely. I think that's almost answered my final question, but it's, what are some of the benefits of buying into a mixed-use precinct that property seekers might not know about?
I think for us, we just love the idea that you're buying in a mixed-use precinct. I suppose whether it's a greenfield or medium density, high density village, and we always like to encourage, I suppose, a mix between the lot as well, because it'll be different buyers that will want to live in a house and land package or a townhouse or an apartment. So that starts to create this diverse new community from the start. But we love the idea that you could walk around, walk out your front door. You've got a great bike path there that connects to a little neighbourhood pocket park. So you get to know your surrounding neighbours through there. From there, the bike path might link through to your own little retail village, so somewhere to stop and get a coffee. You've got that connection through. You can drop the kids at school potentially. So once again, trying to bring education into these mixed-use precincts as well, and then link back to your home. And if we can start to activate laneways where you might see, someone either working from home, running a gym class out of their garage. There's all of this different type of activity, within a 10, 15-minute walk or ride from your house. And it just makes it a really interesting place to live. So yeah, this idea about living local, you've got everything there that you actually need, and it starts to plant the seed of a new community, people connecting, and actually being proud of where you live as well. So yeah, I think if mixed-use precincts, if they're done right, there's huge benefits to living there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jordan, and for sharing your ideas with us. If you'd like to find out more information about Clarke Hopkins Clarke's current and future projects, then make sure to check out urban.com.au. And if you like this interview and want to see more like it, then subscribe to our YouTube channel.